Hey everybody, it is November 11th, 2025 here with your after hours recap. Today, fairly quick and easy. I think the market did exactly what it was supposed to. A lot of the stocks that had, these big bounce days, I talked about it in last night's watch list video. I thought that if the market would just, print some inside days, slight little pullbacks, a little bit of backing and filling, and I even think that tomorrow it could do something very, very similar, that would be fairly healthy. NVIDIA did somewhat of the same, just, not a whole lot, right? A really nice 2-day push. Again, a little bit of backing and filling, a little bit of a pullback, a little bit of digestion, inside days, do a bunch of nothing, that would be best. And then the stocks that have been holding up really well already, something like an Apple, this one tried to, start to push higher and a new all-time closing high today. So can't really be too negative when Apple is at an all-time closing high. And with that, you had some stocks acting really well. Goldman Sachs, if I'm not mistaken, a new all-time closing high. Cannot be too bearish there. Of course, this helped out the Dow Jones, which was your leading ETF today, or leading indice, followed by the S&P 500 and then the Nasdaq. So really a little bit of not as much money flying into the tech space, more money going into healthcare stocks, as kind of noted by the XLV. And I had been pointing this one out really, I think somewhere in here, with the XLV just starting to really show some life and have some stocks within that group that were acting well. Well, yesterday was a good breakout, and then today, very, very powerful 2.3% move within the XLV. And it wasn't just that one. You started to see some of the XLE stocks as well, a 1.3% update, and this one has just been very nicely, undercuts the 200, reclaims, finds support there, and then really takes off nicely. Do I expect this thing to just continue higher? Not necessarily, but there are some stocks there, like an XOM, which are starting to act very, very nice. And when you kind of zoom back out on the weekly chart, you've just got this really massive base, which, I think that they're starting to move on the idea of, it's going to be, an XOM and a Chevron and a few of these energy stocks, that have access to nat gas as ones that can, power up some of these data centers while we eventually get to a more sustainable nuclear grid, while we get to a more sustainable solar grid. I think that these names are kind of moving on the back of that, because really, if you take into account where these names were in June and July when oil spiked, oil is down 20% from there, but these names have continued higher. That has to be on the back of something, right? And the thinking for me is they're kind of moving as the next frontier, should we say, to power up these data centers. With that said, speaking of the data center stocks, look no further than CRWV. I don't know what the market is telling us here, but down on earnings, down about 16%. That is super ugly. That's not to say it can't get better. That's not to say we can't double bottom at 85 or 84 bucks. But for now, it is looking pretty rough over at CRWV. NBIS today as well, not looking the hottest. You just effectively rejected the 20 simple moving average, and then just rolled over and lost the 50 as well. So for now, what to make of it, I don't know. And then also ORCL, which is, the other quote unquote data center stock that has, made a big move, big gap up, and then that failure. And I kind of tweeted about it on this day. When you gap up like this and then you fail on really massive volume, it kind of just leads normally to like months potentially of consolidation after a move like that. But ultimately, it has been a gap fill. So not the prettiest look there. That's not to say that they'll never go higher, but these data center stocks, even like a Dell, that's just kind of outfitting some of these data center names, not the best action. While the market's been rebounding nicely, Dell not so much, Oracle not so much, CRWV not so much, NBIS not so much. And I don't know what that says about the state of, that space. But ultimately, it is good to make sure that we're paying attention to price. And even AMD today, I know they had like some investor conference today, and Lisa Su was talking. You get this nice spike, and then all of a sudden a failure, and then they come back out and saying like we're going to have like some 35% CAGR over the next 5 years, and here we go spiking right back up. Which I kind of joked like that is incredible to like know that that's what's going to happen when I really don't even know what I'm going to have for dinner. So like how you can foresee the future that far ahead is kind of joke worthy, to be completely honest with you. But God bless those people if they think that they could see 5 years in the future. I don't think anybody can see 5 years in the future, but here we are. It causes a spike to the short-term price in the market. I still think AMD, for now looks okay. Today, a bit of a rejection from the 10 simple moving average, rejected a bit of the 20, probably could use a new base anyway. So I'm not going to be negative on the stock just for the sake of being negative, but I'm also a realist. Nobody knows what the next 5 years for us hold. Not even Lisa Su or not any of the CFOs or CTOs or anybody over at AMD. Don't let yourself be fooled. But ultimately, price is acting still pretty well over at AMD. On my end, another day, another messed up short on SNDK. Again, I tried this one as a first red day setup, effectively shorting it against before it was trying to go green, and you had a nice little failure there until ultimately it V-shape recovers. And there was a little bit of weakness in WDC. So, a bit surprising that, that SNDK held up as well as it did. I'm a little bit of a glutton for punishment, but the thing is with an SNDK, and I've been talking about it quite a bit in the room, I am not comfortable sizing the position up until we actually see some, the tape stay heavy, some fail to follow through, pops that reject, and then ultimately breaking some key levels, like breaking a prior day low, staying underneath VWAP, staying red on the day, breaking its opening print. Like these kind of things matter, and when you retest those levels and then roll over. But ultimately, I'm not even comfortable taking more than a 3% position there. So for me, it's just, kind of more so sideline, speculative position. And then if it works, I can add to the winner. If it doesn't work, I can just cut a super small loss. I did buy some Ford today. It was looking pretty good here. It was just pushing higher, and I was like, oh, cool. But man, it is the slowest mover. I think we joked about it quite a bit in the room, where it's like, we're excited for it to break 1330 because then it'll go to 1331 and 1332. Like it's one of those where the float is so thick. If you look at level 2, it's got like 100,000 shares on like every penny. Like you're just not moving that thing. So it is what it is. And I still held on to it. No big deal. I still have ORCL short, and they reported earnings today, or should I say, they just told us how much money they lost, and they lost more money than the analysts expected. And if I had to guess, ORCL should go a whole hell of a lot lower, considering they're not scheduled to make any money whatsoever until 2029. They don't have a product. They don't sell anything. They don't do anything. They just burn money every single quarter. I'm sitting with a 146 average on my short, and we are just above $100 now. I wouldn't be too surprised if, over the coming days, hopefully, we are down near that $80 where this thing initially broke out from. And at that point, you're down like 60% off those highs. That kind of would make some sense to me. And that's probably where I'd end up getting out. Otherwise, for now, I'll just continue to trail it on the 10 and 20 simple moving average. Tesla, not too much going on there. Just a tight little inside day, maybe a higher low, maybe a push tomorrow. Again, if we start, the problem, and I don't know that it's a problem necessarily, is I have to ask myself if the market's actually ready to, pull this bounce off the 50, V-shape recover, and then, out to new highs into the Santa Claus rally. Maybe. But I also can see us just really chopping around here for a few more days. So kind of with that in back of mind, I do want to make sure that I'm not like getting overly aggressive on the long side when I'm not really gaining traction. Yes, I noticed the XLV showing strength the other day. Yes, it was buyable yesterday, but no, I did not buy the XLV yesterday. So, yes, again, a great push, and I think that that's fine, but I didn't buy it. These aren't names that like I necessarily love, like Eli Lilly, again, a little too far gone for me at this point. What's the other one? ISRG, I did not buy. TMO's another one, that it's like, okay, fine. But ultimately, I'm not buying these names. They're just a little bit too slow for my liking. Even like Goldman Sachs, I'm looking at this thing and going, man, that's a pretty clean chart. JP Morgan, this is a pretty clean chart. BK is a Bank of New York Mellon. This is a fairly clean chart. They're in these little steady uptrends, but I'm not buying these turtles. The reality is I want names that are a little bit faster, that maybe move a little bit more like an XPEP. And this is one that I definitely want to make sure I've got some attention on. I noticed the base here taking place a few weeks ago. I noticed this volume. I kind of dropped it off my radar because I was like, it needs to tighten again. Like, I can't buy this thing. And it completely fell off the map. And then the very next day, it was just off to the races. And yesterday, it was just like gone before it even got back on my radar. Really, really nice to see. And this isn't the only EV name acting fantastic. Rivian is another one. Again, General Motors is not an electric vehicle company, but also really nice recent push, which is part of the reason that I bought Ford today. These automobile stocks are acting fairly well. So we'll see. I think that the market still has some strength in it. When you look at a name like Snowflake, I think that this one acts well. When you look at some cybersecurity stocks like Zscaler, or you look at something like CrowdStrike, these names are continuing to act well. Datadog, another one that's acting fine. So cybersecurity is a space. The healthcare sector is a space. The energy sector with some of the oil and gas stocks and the refiners are definitely acting well. A very, very thin ETF, but this crack ETF is effectively at it looks like a multi-year high. So the refiners are acting really well, and it looks like maybe that uptrend just got started a few months ago. So does it have more legs? I guess we'll find out soon, but it definitely appears that it might. And then really, you could look at a name like Lyft is another one that kind of keeps coming to mind. This is another one. Newer merchandise acting really, really well out to new highs. So that's perfect. And yeah, I just don't really know what to say that's super negative about the market, because Google continues to act well. Apple continues to act well. Names are just digesting perfectly fine if you're like a Palantir or a SoFi or an NVIDIA. Some things are going lower, and I think the names that deserve to go lower are going lower, right? Something like CIFR, which I'm short, and it's working really well. Something like IREN, when it rejected that 74.15 level on this left side peak, I think is working really, really well for now. And we'll just kind of continue to take it one day at a time. But ultimately, even the quantums are staying heavy. The nuclears are staying heavy. So kind of the names that are a bit more pre-revenue, as some might say, are getting beaten up, or the names that got a little bit too ahead of themselves. I'm not sitting here saying that IREN in time cannot go higher, but it would require an entirely new base and some patience. And of course, that there's maybe some money to be made there on the flip side if you were a little bit more savvy to get yourself involved. But otherwise, I don't want to be too negative. I am not too excited outside of XPEV on BABA. I do not like the action today. Closing below the 50 simple moving average, staying heavy, not really finding its footing or going higher. And then on a pleasant surprise, I do own NEM, which I bought the other day going into the weekend. And, we did gap up yesterday. I took a little bit off the table right in here. And then I took some more off the table today when we were going red. And then, of course, we just turned right around and ripped. So that's just how it goes. I still have 60% of my position there. So now I can just kind of let it work using yesterday's lows as my stop on the rest. But yeah, I think that this market is still acting great. Money isn't necessarily just leaving the market. It's rotating. Again, it's going to some energy names. It's going to healthcare. It's still going to mega caps. And those are the things that are acting well. And then it's kind of coming still out of the crypto space. If you're looking at something like an Ethereum, this does not look too hot on a day like today when the market is acting very, very well, in my opinion. And you look at something like Bitcoin, this is also not acting well, in my opinion, and prices actually closing below the 200 simple moving average again. And believe me when I tell you, you do not want to be closing too many times below the 200 simple moving average before you are officially in a stage 4 downtrend. Look no further than MSTR. What happens when you start to live underneath the 200 for too long? eventually you crack, give way, and it is over with for the time being. Again, I know some people trying to bottom fish this low on MSTR. Godspeed. Hopefully that works for you. But ultimately, for me, the cryptos are hands off. Money is going other places. It's not going to Bitcoin. It's not going to Ethereum. It's going to gold and silver. It's going to energy stocks. It's going to healthcare names. It's going to some mega caps. It's not going into crypto, no matter how many times Tom Lee tries to tell you that it's going to crypto. So hopefully you guys all had a super awesome trading day, and I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow. Cheers.